Welcome to the Eisenstein Effect. I'm your host, Vickie Eisenstein, and this is my guest,
Kim Howard Johnson. Just call me Howard.
Okay, Howard.
I'm a writer, I'm an actor, I'm an improviser, I'm an author, I'm a director, I'm a teacher. I can go on like this for days.
Oh, keep going then.
We'll get into it all.
Okay, all
Monty
right.
Python geek and confidant of the group and whatnot. So I'm a little of everything. I was with the I.O. way back. We're filming at the I.O., by the way.
Yeah, we're right in the writing room of the I.O. here in Chicago.
Yeah, and so we're here actually filming, but I was with the I.O. before it was the I.O., back when it was the Improv Olympics. This little rat hole, I shouldn't say that, well, but it was, over on Wilton, North Wilton. Just
On
north of
Wilton?
Belmont.
Not even Clark?
No, no.
Oh, you were way back.
Too expensive for us back then. No, it was a club called Cross Currents, this great little cabaret, and it was the hip place at the time. I met Del Close at a party. I'd taken a couple classes at Second City from Donnie DiPolo way back in the Stone Age, and we were talking to him over at the Ale House after one of the classes, and he said, "Who should you study with?" And I said, "Well, there's only one guy. It's Del Close." So right about that time, I met Del at a party. Del and Sharna showed up. He was doing the Christmas Carol, I think, at the Goodman. And so Del turned up at this party, and the host of the party obviously knew him, and we got to talking, and Sharna said, "Oh, come by, you should come by to take class. We're starting classes next month." So Del was very impressed because I was a writer for Fangoria magazine. So Del was very excited to have me in the class. I remember my first classes were upstairs at Cross Currents. That's where I first met Bob Odenkirk. He was studying back then. And Bob and I got together a few times to write and improvise, and that never went anywhere. I don't know whatever happened to Bob. I hope he's doing okay.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've heard that name, so.
Yeah. I'm going to drop a lot of names during this talk,
Okay.
so please.
We're excited.
Well, it's embarrassing.
That's why I have people on. I'm going to put like a nice little fancy font for every name that you drop, and it'll go like in glitter and then kind of like dissipate.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. I'm going to wear out your glitter people.
Awesome.
Going.
I'm the glitter people.
Oh, okay.
I do all my effects and stunts.
You've bitten off more than you can chew today, my lass.
Well, why don't we backpedal a bit here and kind of start out with the beginning? What got you? Were you always in the arts, an artsy fellow? Like, did you do theater in school or writing, a creative writing program? Or something?
I did a little bit when I was in high school. I was into comedy more than I was into theater or even performing. I was always a huge comedy geek. And I did a couple plays back in high school. My old friend Walt Willey, I went to high school with Walt Willey, who was on All My Children for decades. Walt got me into the plays over there the first time around.
Okay.
So I had a lot of really pathetic small roles and roles which I overacted.
There are no small roles.
They didn't start out that way, but when they saw what I could do, they got smaller. Actually. Well, actually, junior college I did, but that doesn't count. I got a lot of big roles, big parts in big shows for medium-sized actors.
You're making your way up.
Yeah, you can see the trajectory. It's very slightly going the right way. So I went to Illinois State after I got out of junior college.
I know a lot of people who went to Illinois State and did lots of theatrical things. Yeah, it's very good for that.
Well, it was, except I didn't do any theater when I was at Illinois State.
Were you an engineering student?
Yes, I was an engineer. You can tell I'm all about the STEM. Yeah,
I thought so.
Funny you mentioned that though. When I was at Illinois State, it was the time when most of the founders of Steppenwolf were down there.
Really?
And they were hogging the stages.
Oh.
Yeah, I had Laurie Metcalf was in some of my classes. I had who else? Gary Sinise's wife, Moira, lived in our dorms, so we always would have lunch and whatnot.
Gotcha.
So these been who else? Gary Cole, I think, people like that. So the more glitter.
I know, right?
Yeah. But I went into radio and television, and then out of college, I went right into radio.
Okay.
But something completely different had happened before I had gotten out. Once I was in junior college, actually, I discovered Monty Python, which was just starting in America, and this literally changed my life. I saw either the first or one of the very first shows on PBS, Channel 11 in Chicago, and started watching it from that point on. And I just, if I was a comedy geek before, I was even more of a comedy geek after I discovered Python. So I wrote, I remember writing a couple fan letters to the guys. And what I did was, and Terry Jones in one of the letters said, we're doing the show out at the City Center out in New York, why don't you come on out? And so I went out.
So they were like responding to the letters that you sent, even?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Mostly Terry. Well, I met Terry Jones and Graham Chapman in Chicago at the premiere of Holy Grail.
Oh, okay.
And so I kept in touch. Graham never wrote letters, so that was ridiculous. But fortunately, Terry did, and that's what that was just enough to keep me going.
Gotcha.
So Terry invited me out to the City Center, and then he took me around backstage between shows. It was a Saturday night, and introduced me to most of the other guys.
That's so cool.
It was great. It was a lovely thing to do. And, it was. He had no idea where it would lead.
Yeah.
And neither did I, actually. So after this, I wrote this Monty Python fanzine, which, nowadays I would have probably done a website.
Or like a blog of sorts, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it was all about Python. And I sent copies of this thing off to all of the Pythons.
So how often were you writing that?
Well, this was the first issue.
Okay.
This was the very first issue, and it went off to them all. And then I got back, I guess there was a Python meeting not long after they'd received these. And the manager handed them all out to all of the guys at the meeting. And there's a note in Michael Palin's journal about how we got these Python fanzines, we all flunked the quiz. And so I got back all of these gushing letters of praise, just saying how great they thought it was.
Oh, lovely.
And then at the end of Michael Palin's letter, he said, if you're ever in London, be sure to look me up. Well,
so you're like, I now need to find my way to London.
Yeah, so a week later I booked the trip.
That's awesome.
And I went over there, I was in London for a week, and I spent most of that time, I stayed at Graham Chapman's house.
Okay.
Terry Jones was with his family on holiday out in Wales. Terry invited me out there, and so I spent a night out in Wales.
They were never concerned that you might be like a stalker or something?
Back then, it never really occurred to people.
Okay.
I showed up at John Cleese's house just completely unannounced and just rang his bell. And he, you see, what John had done, he'd stuck like a 20-quid note in his letter just saying he wanted more copies of this. So I figured, well, I'll deliver these to John. That's my pretext for going over there. And thank God he didn't push me down the steps, but he invited me in, gave me
It's
scotch.
just so unimaginable in this day and age that like you could show up at like a someone on TV's house and you could like
yeah.
So
It was very weird. It never happened today.
Yeah, but no, that's awesome. Like I love it. That's real gumption too to just go over there. And,
well, I was in London for a week. It was my first night, and I was bored. So I figured, well, I got only 1 week. I might as well make the most of it.
I love that. I'm gonna live my life like that. I'm bored. Let's see what celebrities in town.
There you go. There you go. You never know where it will lead, though.
Oh yeah.
Throw your whole life into disarray.
That's so crazy.
They were getting ready to do Life of Brian, film Life of Brian when I was there. And they had me read the script, and I saw the costumes, and they were talking about it constantly because they were very excited about doing it. And so I got back to the States, and I thought, my God, I should have asked them for a job. What was I thinking? So I actually sent a telegram. I think it's the only time in my life I ever sent a telegram.
They still had telegrams?
This is how long ago it was.
Oh gosh.
Yes, nowadays, you just
email
off
or
a text.
something, yeah.
But I asked her, are there any jobs? And the manager said, sure, come on over, we'll find something for you to do. So I went over to Tunisia. And
that's where they were filming Life of Brian?
That's where they were filming Life of Brian.
Okay.
And this is also something you would never do nowadays. You show up in Tunisia.
Like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
What's up, people in the desert?
But that was it. I was when they filmed it. The biggest part of it at this old Muslim castle in Monastir, a town called Monastir, and so I got to live with them work with them for almost 2 months.
And
during the filming.
What were you doing in that time? What was your job?
Well, I did a little of everything. The first day I was there, see, I just bought a brand new Minolta camera right before I went over there and took it to take it over with me. And I got there and I was talking to Graham. I showed Graham my camera, and he had just gotten the camera as well. And we got there, we went out there on a Friday, I think, and walked around the sets, and there were rehearsals, and everything was going so well. They thought, well, let's just start filming early. So they decided they'd start filming on the Saturday. Well, their still photographer wasn't there on the Saturday, so I was the still photographer.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
He's really jumped right in.
You never know. So they're filming the stoning sequence, and I'm there taking shots.
That's great.
So yeah, I was like a unit journalist, and I kept records of everything that went on during the filming, day by day. I was on the set virtually dawn to dusk whenever they were there.
Awesome.
But I was also in the film in spots. I doubled for guys. I was an extra. I'm a Roman soldier a lot through.
Were you? Okay.
Yeah.
Now I have to rewatch it and try and
You're
spot
gonna
it.
watch fast, but you can see me if you know right exactly when and where to look.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's like I did background acting for a while, and I always had to tell my mom, I was like, okay, you might see me crossing behind the actors in the library. There was an argument during the scene. I don't know, try this week.
Yeah. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Cool, so you went to Tunisia, and you're doing all these, like, you're really integrated with them. And then what happened after that, where they were like, hey, stick around, we like working with you?
Well, the trouble with the Pythons is they didn't all stay together in one group permanently.
Yeah.
That was the problem. They kind of drifted in and out. Life of Brian filmed was released in New York the following year. So I went out there for the filming and connected up with the guys again. And then the year after that, 1980, they did a stage show at the Hollywood Bowl. So I went out to that as well, of course. And I'm not going to mention all the celebrity names, but it was unbelievable.
Yeah, please go easy on my fonts.
Easy on that. Yes. But I ended up being in the show. I was a pantomime goose.
Well, why don't we talk about your books?
We can talk about my books. Sure. First book, I meant to write a Python book all along, and I talked to the Python's manager, and she thought, well, not really a good time. So she kind of blew me off. So I never really worried about it at that point, and then it just all sat dormant for a while.
Yeah.
And then it was like 1987 or 88. I decided, well, what the hell? Because a buddy of mine was Max Allen Collins, who was a very successful detective writer, and his agent happened to specialize in detective books and show business books. So
that's interesting too. Like you would think like maybe detective and horror. That's an interesting intersection.
Some way to connect them. How do you do that? Yeah. So but anyway, it was the perfect time. There'd been like really no Python books published in America. And so in 1987, I started putting this thing together. This was perfect timing, as it turned out, because I'd been working in magazines throughout the 80s, really. Starlog magazine, Preview magazine, video magazines, and whatnot. And so I kept in touch with the Pythons throughout the 80s, doing a lot of this. And when Graham Chapman was on his tours, doing his lecture tours throughout the 80s. So I got to see a lot more of Graham than really anybody else as far as Python goes. I did some pretty extensive interviews with all of the guys, in the late 80s, and this was a good thing that I did because I got all of this stuff down from Graham, and then right about within a month or so of the time the book was coming out, Graham died.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, and so I mean, if I hadn't have been there archiving all of this stuff,
Yeah, it
Graham's
wouldn't have
thoughts
been documented
would have
at
been
all.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what I'm particularly happy about
Yeah.
with my first Python book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then,
And it's just like a biography of them? Or?
this is I was kind of stupid. I crammed absolutely everything in there.
Okay.
It was episode guide to all of the shows,
Uh-huh.
the guys' comments about various sketches that were in each of the shows. I also wrote a section about all the things they did pre-Python, a section about all that they did post-Python. I did another biography section.
Okay.
There were
It's
just
got everything in it, yeah.
yeah, I should have made it into 3 books.
Smorgasbord.
probably. Yeah.
Well, you could always
But-
release another edition.
I could.
Yeah.
I could. It's in the early 80s that I first got involved with performing. See, when I came back from Tunisia, I eventually got back into radio work again. And just, in radio, when you've got the best job in radio, you've got to get up like at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, for
So
like the
this
morning
is
hours.
what you
yeah.
aspire to in radio is, oh boy, if I just keep really working at it, I'll be getting up at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
This didn't appeal to me a whole lot.
That is a kind of crazy schedule to keep.
Yeah. So I ended up getting out of radio, moving to Chicago, and this is when I decided I wanted to, get into comedy, and just see about performing, improvising, and whatnot.
And that's how you ended up with Improv Olympic and.
That's how I met Del and Sharna, and that's how I got involved with the whole thing, because
Gotcha.
for a year or so we just kind of experimented on this long form thing it had been called the Herald back by the committee in San Francisco in the late 60s, and Del kept trying to revive it. The rest of the committee just kind of let it go. They didn't do much work at it, but in the early 80s, Del decided, he really wanted to try to develop this form, and so we were his guinea pigs.
Gotcha.
So all of this stuff that became long form really came out of that period in the early 80s with Del.
So interesting.
And it was, I can remember very clearly, we had a couple of false starts, and then we got our group ended up getting together, the Barons Barracudas, after these false starts, and we were a success almost immediately. Well, at the end of the 90s, I had stayed in touch with all of the guys, of course. John Cleese asked me to come back, to come out to Santa Barbara, where he was, to work as his personal assistant.
Awesome.
So I packed up the family, and yeah, so it was great. So we were there for just about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Out in Santa Barbara. Yeah, which was wonderful. But unfortunately, he had this very, very expensive divorce. And so we moved back here. And when we did move back here, I slowly started drifting back toward the I.O.
Gotcha.
I'd always done improv and I've always done comedy. But Michael McCarthy was a dear old pal of mine. And Michael and I, Michael had organized the writing program here at the I.O., which is where we are sitting right now. Thank you, Michael.
Dun-dun-dun.
And, and so that kind of got me more involved in this.
Gotcha.
And so I started out, just substituting for Michael, and then I started developing classes. That's why today we have a Python writing class here at the I.O. Teach these guys to write in the style of the Pythons.
Do you see anyone with potential in your classes who will be the next generation of Pythons?
There's some shockingly good people. I can't believe how good some of this stuff is.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So we're going to have a reading next week, which will be too late for you people probably. But
Yeah, sorry.
But
Production turnarounds.
I know.
One person. I'm one person.
glitter and fonts,
Probably won't even happen.
Well, now
I'll
you have
literally
to.
be sitting there Tuesday night, like at 3 a.m. Fuck this shit.
No, you've committed yourself. You made a promise to them.
You know how many times I've made a promise and not gone through with it? They're used to it. I'm like the drunk father that they might have had.
And we're doing this year, this first session, we started working on what I call Python Prov, which is improvising in the style of Python.
Oh, cool.
Which is what I've told the Pythons about this, and John, okay, and Terry Jones, we don't improv. We never improvise. How can you do that?
What was their process like?
It was very strict writing.
Oh, okay.
They wrote in teams. Yeah, it was all written.
Oh.
And they would labor over each word and memorize things word for word. There's very little improvising going on in Python.
Well,
God, I haven't even talked about my Dell biography. I haven't talked about Truth in Comedy. I haven't talked about, wow, there's a lot.
so those are two other books that he's put out.
Yeah, well, I co-wrote Truth in Comedy with Dell and Sharna, actually. This was early 90s, I guess it was. But the Dell biography, I didn't realize this at the time, but before Dell died, my wife had been talking to him and about a biography, and she said, Howard really should probably be the one to write it. And Dell said, well, of course, and of course he should, yeah. So I didn't know it at the time, but I was his designated biographer.
That's so funny.
My God, I would urge people to read my Dell biography just because it's got all the stories. I mean, just steal somebody's copy if you don't want to buy it. It doesn't matter. You should know Dell. You should really know Dell.
There might be like if I remember, dear Vickie, who's editing this, put a link in the description. So
Good
if
idea,
you,
Vickie.
dear viewer or listener, if you look in the description box, you might see a link to some of these books.
All right, that sounds good. Yeah.
Now, do you see yourself, are you going to be writing another book soon, or do you have any plans so far as that goes?
Oh, man. Yeah, I feel guilty because I do have another book. I've written some fiction, and I've got a two-part science fiction series that's out right now.
That's
the
awesome.
Last of the Time Police. But that's out now. But I've also got a book that I need to finish. I ran into some roadblocks. A book about the committee out in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's great. I think we're at the point now where I ask if you have anything you want to plug.
Well, I've got books, I've got classes, go to Amazon.com, Kim Howard Johnson, and there's a big huge, we didn't talk about the Superman graphic novel that I co-wrote with John Cleese.
Oh, that's really awesome. Thank you so much for being on. As usual, thank you for watching and listening, people. Make sure that you check out my website, www.vickieeisenstein.com. Also, if you're on YouTube, check out the podcast on SoundCloud. If you're on the SoundCloud or iTunes podcast, check out the YouTube videos. And make sure to check at Eisenstein, EFCT, on Twitter. Also, my personal account, at Vickie Ironstone. I could just plug all day. Please, please, please check out. I have.
You're very good at this.
Please check out my Patreon account, Patreon, I don't know.
What is
You can
that?
actually, it's a really cool way for people to, since, I do all this for free, if you'd like to give me a tip of sorts, then
Good
that's
idea.
a way to pay creators and to
Yes.
help them create more content. So,
Yes, pay her.
yeah,
Please.
for as little as $1 a month, you can help a starving creator.
Help a starving improviser
Yeah.
out there. Yes, they need it.
There you go. So that's just patreon.com/Vickie Eisenstein, I think. I'll put all these links in the descriptions, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Vickie.
Yeah. And bye.